chests in the dresser, opened the cupboard, and took thence several articles which he named, each in order: "A pair o' jack boots, 2 brushes, blacking, and a burnisher." Having set these down, one by one, upon the dresser, he wheeled, and addressed himself to Bellew, as follows: "Mr. Bellew, sir, this evening being the anniversary of a certain event, sir, I will ask you to excuse me, while I make the necessary preparations to honour this anniversary, as is ever my custom." As he ended, he dropped the 2 brushes, the blacking, and the burnisher inside the legs of the boots, picked them up with a sweep of the arm, and, turning short round, strode out into the little garden. "A fine fellow is Dick, sir," nodded Peterday, beginning to fill a long clay pipe. "Lord, what a sailor he'd ha' made, to be sure, failing which he's as fine a soldier as ever was, or will be, with enough war medals to fill my Sunday hat, sir. When he lost his arm they gave him the V.C. and his discharge, sir, because why? Because a soldier with one arm ain't any more good than a sailor with one leg, d'ye see? So they tried to discharge Dick, but, Lord love you, they couldn't, sir, because why? Because Dick were a soldier bred and born, and is as much a soldier to day as ever he was, and always will be, until he goes marching aloft, like poor Tom Bowling, until one as is General of all the armies, and Admiral of all the fleets as ever sailed, shall call the last muster roll, sir. At this present moment, sir," continued the sailor, lighting his pipe with a live coal from the fire, "my messmate is sitting to the leeward o' the plum tree outside, a polishing of his jack boots, as don't need polishing, and a burnishing of his spurs, as don't need burnishing, and because why? Because he goes on guard to night, according to custom." "On guard?" repeated Bellew. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "Of course you don't, sir," chuckled Peterday. "Well then, to night he marches away, in full regimentals, sir, to mount guard, and where do you suppose? Why, I'll tell you, under Miss Priscilla's window. He gets there as the clock is striking 11, and there he stays, a marching to and fro until 12 o'clock, which does him a world of good, sir, and no ways displeases Miss Priscilla, because why? Because she don't know nothing whatever about it." Hereupon Peterday rose, and crossing to a battered seaman's chest in the corner, came back with 3 or 4 tin whistles which he handed to Bellew, who laid aside his pipe, and having selected one, ran tentatively up and down the scale while Peterday listened attentive of ear, and beaming of face. "Sir," said he, "what do you say to 'Annie Laurie' as a start? Shall we give him 'Annie Laurie'? Very good. Ready? Go!" Thus George Bellew, American citizen, and millionaire, piped away on a tin whistle with all the gusto in the world, introducing little trills and flourishes, here and there, that fairly won the one legged sailor's heart. They had already "given 'em" 3 or 4 selections, each of which had been vociferously encored by Peterday, or Bellew, and had just finished an impassioned rendering of "Suwanee River," when the Sergeant appeared with his boots beneath his arm. "Shipmate," cried Peterday, flourishing his whistle, "did you ever hear a tin whistle better played or mellower in tone?" "Miller is the only word for it, comrade, and your playing, sirs, is artistic, though doleful. Perhaps you wouldn't mind giving us something brighter, a rattling quick step, perhaps you might remember one as begins: 'Some talk of Alexander, and some of Hercules,' if it wouldn't be troubling you too much." Forthwith they burst forth into the British Grenadiers, and never did tin whistles render the famous old tune with more fire and dash. As the stirring notes rang out, the Sergeant, standing upon the hearth, seemed to grow taller, his broad chest expanded, his eyes glowed, a flush crept into his cheek, and the whole man thrilled to the music, as he had done, many a time and oft, in years gone by. As the last notes died away, he glanced down at the empty sleeve pinned across his breast, shook his head, and, thinking them in a very gruff voice indeed, turned on his heel, and busied himself at his little cupboard. Peterday now rose, and set a jug together with 3 glasses upon the table, also spoons, and a lemon, keeping his weather eye, meanwhile, upon the kettle, which last, condescending to boil obligingly, he rapped 3 times with his wooden leg. "Right oh, Shipmate!" he cried, very much as though he had been hailing the maintop, whereupon the Sergeant emerged from between the clothes press and the dresser, with a black bottle in his hand, which he passed over to Peterday who set about brewing what he called a "jorum o' grog," the savour of which filled the place with a right pleasant fragrance. And, when the glasses brimmed, each with a slice of lemon atop, the Sergeant solemnly rose. "Mr. Bellew, and comrade," said he, lifting his glass, "I give you Miss Priscilla." "God bless her!" said Peterday. "Amen!" added Bellew. So the toast was drunk, the glasses were emptied, refilled, and emptied again, this time more slowly, and the clock striking 9, Bellew rose to take his leave, seeing which, the Sergeant fetched his hat and stick, and volunteered to accompany him a little way. So, when Bellew had shaken the sailor's honest hand, they set out together. "Sergeant," said Bellew, after they had walked some distance, "I have a message for you." "For me, sir?" "From Miss Priscilla." Indeed, sir?" "She bid me tell you that the peaches are riper to night than ever they were." The Sergeant seemed to find in this a subject for profound thought, and he strode on beside Bellew very silently, and with his eyes straight before him. "That the peaches were riper, to night, than ever they were?" said he at last. "Yes, Sergeant." "Riper!" said the Sergeant, as though turning this over in his mind. "Riper than ever they were," nodded Bellew. "The peaches, I think, sir." "The peaches, yes." Bellew heard the Sergeant's finger rasping to and fro, across his shaven chin. "Mr. Bellew, sir, she is a very remarkable woman, sir." "Yes, Sergeant." "A wonderful woman." "Yes, Sergeant." "The kind of woman that improves with age, sir." "Yes, Sergeant." "Talking of peaches, sir, I've often thought that she is very like a peach, herself, sir." "Very, Sergeant, but " "Well, sir?" "Peaches do not improve with age, Sergeant, and the peaches are riper than ever they were, to night." The Sergeant stopped short, and stared at Bellew wide eyed. "Why, sir," said he very slowly, "you don't mean to say you think as she meant that " "But I do," nodded Bellew. And now, just as suddenly as he had stopped, the Sergeant turned, and went on again. "Lord!" he whispered, "Lord, Lord!" The moon was rising, and, looking at the Sergeant, Bellew saw that there was a wonderful light in his face, yet a light that was not of the moon. "Sergeant," said Bellew, laying a hand upon his shoulder, "why don't you speak to her?" "Speak to her? What, me? No, no, Mr. Bellew," said the Sergeant, hastily. "No, no, can't be done, sir, not to be mentioned, or thought of, sir." The light was all gone out of his face now, and he walked with his chin on his breast. "The surprising thing to me, Sergeant, is that you have never thought of putting your fortune to the test, and speaking your mind to her, before now." "Thought of it, sir?" repeated the Sergeant bitterly. "Thought of it? Lord, sir, I've thought of it these 5 years, and more. I've thought of it, day and night. I've thought of it so very much that I know I never can speak my mind to her. Look at me!" he cried suddenly, wheeling and confronting Bellew, but not at all like his bold, erect, soldierly self. "Yes, look at me, a poor, battered old soldier, with his best arm gone, left behind him in India, and with nothing in the world but his old uniform, getting very frayed and worn, like himself, sir, a pair of jack boots, likewise very much worn, though wonderfully patched here and there by my good comrade Peterday, a handful of medals, and a very modest pension. Look at me, with the best of my days behind me, and wi' only one arm left, and I'm a deal more awkward and helpless with that one arm than you'd think, sir. Look at me, and then tell me how could such a man dare